All right. So thank you everyone so much for coming to this week's Science on Tap. It's been a long time since the last installment, but it's good to see you guys here. So today, Daniel has invited some very special guests. So Daniel, do you want to go ahead and start the introduction?
So yeah, again, I second John in thanking everyone for coming today for this special Science on Tap. So we have three guests with us today. We have Mehdi, who's a faculty at MGH Neurology and a founder of the Science Rehashed podcast, which will be talking about us today. We have Shen, who's a co-founder of the Science Rehashed podcast. She's a PhD MD candidate at the BU. And Chiara, who's joined the podcast team. She's here a member from the Martinos, and she's a writer for the Science Rehashed. And well, I'll just give the floor to them to talk and tell us a little bit about this project to disseminate science. Yeah, thank you guys for willing to share it with us.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Well, thank you for having us on Science on Tap. We're really excited to share this podcast, and also I think it'll be a really awesome resource for scientists at Martinos and also around the world. I'm going to share my screen real quick and we'll get the presentation started. Does everyone see?
Yep.
Does this look okay? Okay, excellent. So we are a team of scientists motivated by providing universal access to recently published science to scientists all over the world. I want you to imagine wanting to be a scientist while growing up in the Middle East in a lower class family raised by a single mother alongside 3 siblings. And being a scientist was Mehdi's childhood dream. As he pursued his education in Iran, he discovered the limitations of the lack of resources. During one of his courses called Modern Nanochemistry, he found that the most recent papers that were available were buried in the backs of the stacks in the library from over 10 years ago. And years later, and as you can see, many gray hairs later, after overcoming many setbacks, he's pursued his graduate education in Switzerland and then began his postdoctoral training at MIT and Harvard, now transitioned into his faculty position here at MGH. And it was during this time that he could finally freely explore the latest science and engineering breakthroughs without any limitations. And because of this, he wanted to give back by eliminating access disparities and helping future young scientists around the world to overcome the hurdle he experienced. And that's why we made Science Rehashed. And we believe in open access. And as of today, there are over 2 million scientists in the developing countries without the same resources as we do here in Boston and Charlestown due to the lack of subscriptions to those scientific journals at their institutions. And even though open access has really come a long way, it's still very expensive to publish in these journals. And therefore, there's many high impact papers that are still published in those subscription-based journals. Unfortunately, we cannot share those articles freely, but we can ask the authors of the papers to talk about their work through a podcast. Therefore, our mission at Science Rehashed is to provide universal access to some of those papers through podcast interviews with the lead authors to highlight the background and motivation of the study, some of the key findings, and the future application of their work. And to do this, we currently have 13 very talented individuals, including Chiara here, where we formed an interdisciplinary team ranging from faculty members to graduate students to freelance artists and audio engineers. And right now we offer 4 different series that fill in the gap in the current science podcast landscape. Rehashing Science is the main one and covers some of the recently high impact published papers where we speak with the corresponding author and have them walk us through the findings, the motivations, and where they see their work going for the future of their field. We also have Meet the Legend series, which interviews some of the top pioneers in the life sciences and engineering. We also have a 360 perspective series that provides a really broad and comprehensive overview of a particular topic like cancer or COVID, serving as a platform to disperse diverse but accurate information. And we also just initiated a Wonder Woman in Science and Engineering, which highlights many female scientists to promote their work and discuss some of the issues regarding gender disparity in the STEM fields. So in a nutshell, Science Rehashed is a podcast designed to be from an interdisciplinary and culturally diverse scientist team to cover a more comprehensive dialogue in science. And we started in October of last year, and since then we released over 21 episodes, hosted 32 leading experts in the fields of medicine, biological sciences, engineering, and released over 500 minutes of scientific content. We've reached over people, over 75 countries around the globe, and we're seeing a rising number of listeners across all the podcast platforms, and that includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, etc. And to continue to spread our mission across the US internationally, we just initiated an ambassador program where scientists and students from anywhere can introduce Science Rehashed to their peers through the platforms kind of specific to their countries. We initiated this because we recognize Apple and Spotify maybe only, maybe US centric or even Eurocentric, but the other countries around the world have different platforms. So we want to work with people in those countries to disperse information in the platform that is popular in their country. And so far, the support received from the community has been really incredible and humbling. We're featured in a number of different news articles and selected as one of the top podcasts in the life sciences category on Apple Podcast. In the upcoming years, we aim to achieve a more pronounced international presence and expand our community outreach. We're also initiating other media platforms, including YouTube and a monthly newsletter. And our goal is to make sure that no aspiring individual will give up on science because of lack of resources. And this should be the last challenge any scientist has to face in their journey. And what can you do to join our mission? You can go online, connect with us, listen to us. You can also nominate a guest or a paper. If you have a friend who just published an amazing paper, or you yourself just published an amazing paper and you want to share it with the world, then please log on to www.sciencerehashed, go on to contact us, just fill in your name, contact info, send us the paper link, and we'll take a look at it. If you're interested in being part of the team and our mission resonates with you, we'd love to talk to you about being a writer, a editor, a YouTuber, whatever kind of is within your interest. I think our goal really and mission is to make sure that we close the gap in this particular disparity with open access to science. And this is us at Science Rehashed, and we're open to any questions.
Thank you, Shen, for your talk. So we do take questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions, you can either use the Q&A or write to us directly. Maybe I will start with a question then, and that is, how you said that people suggest, they can suggest to you what papers that they want to listen to, and that this can come from friends or whatnot. Do you have any sort of way of having the listeners maybe ask for a follow-up, or if they're truly interested, and let's say people who don't have access to science and say, hey, I listened to this particular episode, I liked it a lot, what now? Is there a way for me to actually get these papers, or do you support any sort of I would say maybe going more than just a dissemination, but towards a mentoring step, or is this something that you think about? Or
absolutely, I'll let Mehdi answer this. It's a great question.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for the invitation and having us today. It's an amazing group at Martinos Centers, and it's a pleasure for us to be here. So we have a nice interactions with the listeners, with everyone who is going to be be involved with the Science Rehashed. It can come as Shen mentioned, it can come as a suggestion. A paper can be suggested, a recent paper which is published and a breakthrough in either life science and engineering, or it can be a suggestion from a follow-up episode or a documentary that you have seen. And if we see that it resonates with the missions of the Science Rehashed, definitely we're going to discuss it. We have a platform to discuss all the suggestions, and we're going to follow up with it. And I like the idea of kind of a mentoring things. This is something that we would love to have more people come in and come together and unite with us, and we can share these thoughts and make it happen. most of the time we ask people to come to us and play a key role in Science Rehashed if they really want to be part of this. We had a few examples already in the last year that people came and suggested a few ideas, and we said, why not? You come and lead the whole thing. And they are part of the team right now, and they play a substantial role in Science Rehashed.
Thanks for the answer.
So I can follow up with a second question. So firstly, thank you so much for the presentation and for being here. You're clearly doing very important work and very good work. So I was wondering, you said that the focus of this is sort of like scientist to scientist. Do you have any sort of plans on making this accessible to a wider audience, you know, like high school students or like people who are not of like a scientific background, you know, just like getting like a wider reach like that?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question. So one of the first struggles, and I'll share a little bit of our initial struggles through Science Rehashed, which is figuring out whether to tailor the podcast to a, you know, someone with a graduate degree and has done a lot of science, therefore can follow the details of the work, or someone who's never done a lot of science but is interested in a number of different science topics and would like to learn. And we initially struggled with it because a lot of the scientific papers, especially when you invite the PI to come in and talk, they get really excited and they go into the details. They start using abbreviations and jargons, right?
Yeah.
So that initially was difficult for us to kind of figure out whether we needed to explain or we needed to stop them and ask them to explain certain words. And we recently, over a number of different episodes, and if you kind of go through our podcast episodes, you'll see an evolution of how we managed to create a narrative such that you don't necessarily need a very strong science background to understand. If we can explain some of the terminology through our narration or recognize during the interview that these are terminology that might not be understandable to anyone on the street, we stop and ask them to, okay, you've mentioned these words, can you please just explain it really quick, and we'll cut it into our podcast later and edit it in a way that makes sense for the flow of the story. And that's worked really nicely so far. And I think our goal is, of course, to make it understandable for scientists, but also for anyone who listens to the podcast.
I see. And is you might have mentioned it, but I just zoomed out. But is it available on some sort of like streaming platform, or is it only on downloads, or?
Yeah, if you just go on Spotify, you can play it directly.
On
Apple
Spotify,
as well, Google Podcasts, all the platforms.
Okay, perfect.
All the common ones, at least in the US.
Right.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you guys have a favorite episode, or if you were to describe one episode that really gives the idea of how science is rehashed, where like a very complicated paper that you guys broke down in a particular way to make it accessible, or
I would say
so that, you know, we begin to listen from like a suggestion.
Absolutely. I'll share my favorite. It's actually the episode that's coming up next Wednesday. It's a paper on Parkinson's disease and stem cell therapy in an actual patient with Parkinson's disease. And we luckily had an amazing guest who was able to explain very complicated medical as well as scientific procedures in a very complete and understandable way. We were able to also, I would say, create a very nice narrative that flows quite nicely. Also, I would attribute it to the speaker himself being able to do that himself already once we asked the question. But I felt that I was literally just editing it earlier this week. We were all kind of finishing up with the editing, and it was a wonderful episode, and I really loved it.
Kind of looking forward.
I don't know, Mehdi, what's yours?
For me, I think all of them are like my babies, and I love all the episodes. It's a huge teamwork has been done for each episode that we released. I think that one of the So for the upcoming episode, absolutely in a very exciting episode from Jeff Schweitzer at MGH, where they transplanted stem cells, iPS, for the first time from patient-derived iPS cells in PD patients, and it's pretty successful over the last 3 years. The paper published in New England Journal of Medicine, and it's a huge breakthrough in early Parkinson's disease field. So we are very excited for the release of the upcoming episode. But in general, I had a good pleasure of working for the COVID-19 episodes. It's one of the 360 perspective episodes, which we had a very long-term plan to release one of these episodes, and then the pandemic happened, and we decided within a few days that why not releasing our first 360 episodes with an accurate information about the pandemic, about the COVID-19, talking to the experts, talking to the clinicians, the epidemiologists, and maybe we are at the right time, at the right place right now to release that. So we interviewed over 7-8 guests within like 1 week. We were working 24/7, the whole team, and we released it within 2 weeks. Like, it's a huge work. It's like over 1 hour episodes with incredible experts in the field, and that was I felt it's a huge teamwork and has been done with the motivations of the teams. And one thing that I would love to add here, it's our team is very unique team. It's all volunteers, all scientists. They all have their daily basis work with lab bench or other work, but they all volunteer their precious time or at night or over the weekend, and they have this motivation to do this science rehash and release it for the whole community, scientists and non-scientists alike, over the globe. And I'm very happy to be part of this team.
Yeah, I wanted to. Oh,
Please go on.
I just wanted to follow up on that. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, I just want to share that I'm really happy to be part of the team. And then even if I recently joined, it's been a really exciting, fun, and rewarding experience. So just wanted to follow up on that. And I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, Kiara said, so she's one of our writers, and she's a fantastic writer, and also wrote one of the press releases for us as well. And it's been really a pleasure having her. And I wanted to add a little bit about the 360, and I definitely think it would have been my favorite episode if I didn't hear this most recent one that's about to be released. But one of the reasons is that it's, with the COVID, it's kind of showing us, especially during these times, how important collaborations are, not just across different fields, but now across continents. And so in a way, with our episode, we've kind of brought together experts from various fields, trying to talk about one particular aspect. And there's this kind of, even though they weren't interviewed at the same time, they were kind of we're having different separate individual conversations with them. They all tied in together, and it was really incredible to see that come together. And I thought it was kind of almost prelude to what we're seeing now, because we did this episode way earlier at the beginning of of the COVID pandemic. And now what we're seeing internationally with the collaborations with now academia working with industry, and a lot of the interdisciplinary work that's being done across engineering and medicine, it was almost like we could see this happening even before it was happening, just by the conversations we had with the scientists and policymakers.
That's really fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing it. Do you guys actually get support from MGH or from the BU to keep this podcast going, or do you guys have to fund everything out of pocket? How do you make it?
I will take the lead here. The entity is an independent entity, is not involved with MGH or BU, but we were lucky enough to be part of the BU innovation pathway competition, and we are right now on the stage 2. So we were funded by the BU last year. We are seeking seed money and grants, and we apply everywhere for funding.
Yeah, we were just awarded the 2020 Life Sciences and Healthcare Nonprofit Pitch Challenge competition. We were the winning team, so we were able to get some funding there, and I think we'll continue to look for funding from nonprofit entities, but also starting to look for potential sponsorships from venture capital or biotech, anyone who kind of resonates with our particular mission and wants to support us. We also just started a funding crowdfunding website on iFund Women. So that's I just initiated it yesterday. So that's also up. So I guess for the audience members who like to donate, if you can go on there and donate to the mission.
Sounds fun. Yeah, thanks a lot, Shen.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks to all of you guys for taking the time and to share this with us. Really cool. I'm really eager to listen to it. I guess I'll start with the COVID episode while the Parkinson's one doesn't come out. And I was just wondering, maybe to close, we have been having some discussions about this very platform, the Science on Tap, that we use to give these talks, right? Because these used to be hosted at the Martinos Center. Now at a time of pandemic, we're doing it virtually. Would you have any ideas at all how we can make like a virtual platform more attractive to disseminate science? Yeah, if you have any insights, how we could make it like maybe more interactive, or or maybe instead of just having one guest like we have today 3, or have maybe a team, or make it into a discussion. If you had any insights that we could like profit from your experience, yeah, interviewing and disseminating science, would be happy to hear from you. Yeah.
Is it a cash profit or profit scientifically?
No, this is not for profit.
Yeah. One thing I've kind of seen with, I think, Open Box Science, I don't know if you heard about it, but they host, okay, so they're essentially very similar in that they host 3 to 4 different guests per I guess,
per
session. Yeah, per session. And they're, I think, on Thursday afternoons or something like that. And they have social media platforms so that they can notify people of the different speakers who are coming. And they usually invite 3 or 4 different speakers of kind of with a theme, but on different, specific papers. So I've seen that work out really nicely, and that it attracts perhaps, scientists from that field who's interested in, one particular topic. But then if you have multiple speakers, then it covers more ground for the type of audience you attract. Social media really is important. That's how we disseminate kind of our podcast. We, advertise through Facebook, Twitter, etc. And so, having that presence, online presence, would be really helpful. So I think that would be my recommendation, the first one to do.
YouTube.
Oh yeah, this
airing,
would be...
Yeah, airing in YouTube like live, I think it would help a lot also.
There's also Facebook Live or other platforms we can, host videos live and post it on Facebook. I think that's also helpful.
It's a very cool idea. I'll see if the Martinos authorizes us to do this, because I guess this would be quite convenient too.
Yeah.
I actually think that we used to do that before. During spring, we used to have this Facebook Live and Twitter and the whole 9 yards. So maybe we should consider going back to that as well.